Well, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. So, got a pretty interesting debate slash discussion to review here. We're actually going to watch a significant portion of it together. It is the Bob Larson versus Ammon Hillman debate that just recently took place on Danny Jones's podcast. Must confess, I haven't heard of Danny Jones until this, but somebody alerted me to the debate and the discussion and told me that I need to review it. And it sounded promising because I've heard of Bob Larson before. Some of you may know him as a deliverance minister or exorcist. Others may know him as a fraud. Just depends on your perspective. Some think that he's like the real deal, a real legit exorcist. Others think that he's just a grifter, a fake, and a fraud, capitalizing on people's beliefs for money and other reasons. So whether or not he's legitimate or not, I'll leave you to explore that question on your own. We're not going to examine that today. I have never heard of Ammon Hillman before. He is evidently a former professor and a philologist, so an expert in languages, their roots and meaning, or words, I should say, rather than languages. I, again, haven't heard of him before, but I do get the impression he's trolling. Bob Larson, in the video, he portrays himself as demonically possessed. Whether or not he is demonically possessed, I certainly think that he plays into that claim to troll Bob Larson during the entire discussion. And for one reason or another, Bob Larson falls into the trap and doesn't allow for a productive conversation. In fairness, Ammon's positions are outrageously scandalous. Some would say even blasphemous. So please be aware. The subject nature of today's discussion is going to be highly disturbing. Some of the accusations he makes against Jesus are highly disturbing and offensive. Yet, since this is the society in which we live in today, and these are the kinds of discussions that are out there, for better or worse, it's important that we engage them. And he is making some pretty outrageous claims about Jesus, which I think are worth refuting, which we will certainly be doing in this video. As well as just simply analyzing everything else that takes place in this exchange / debate. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Going to share my screen. And let's begin after the part where he attempts to convert the host. That is Bob Larson. Bob Larson leads him through a prayer to ask God to open him up to the truth of Christianity and show him if it's true, and everything that goes along with that. So we're skipping all that part, and we're cutting to the chase where there's a discussion, if you can call it that, on the nature of the Bible, the biblical text. Ammon is going to contend that Larson cannot actually read the Bible because all he can do is read a translation. He cannot read the Old Testament in Hebrew and Aramaic, and he cannot read the New Testament in Koine Greek. That being said, I don't think, and I don't get the impression that Ammon himself is very proficient in the biblical languages. Not that I'm an expert in them, but certainly the experts don't think that he's proficient. And also with what I know, I can tell he's not an expert in them either. But he does know more about the biblical text and languages than Bob Larson. So he somewhat has an upper hand here. And he tries to get Larson to play into that, to get into a biblical debate. And Larson just doesn't want to do it. And it ultimately makes Larson look really bad. So let me make sure that you can hear the audio as I share that screen. Please let me know if there are any difficulties in hearing the audio. Please put it in the chat. Let me know if there's any effects like echoes, stuff like that. All right, let's go ahead and begin. Oh, and I am going to play it just slightly faster than normal so I don't get a copyright strike. So just FYI.
think, based on everything you've learned about Ammon and listening to the podcast, do you think that he is truly possessed by a demon?
Unquestionably. Unquestionably. I can't see his face. That's the only problem because of these lights here, but that's
Can
okay.
you put some light on my face?
I can't.
Am I gonna look like trash in this?
No,
or
you
what?
look great. Can you show a picture of Ammon on the camera?
I can't see past his shirt.
There we go. Go to the solo. Go to the solo on.
Look, I have a glow.
Look at him. He looks gorgeous.
Oh my God. If
Okay.
you can't get in with that,
He's got a
something's
sheen.
wrong with you, baby.
He wore that shirt for me today, and he knows it.
I did. Do you know who this is?
You tell me.
That shirt?
No, that's okay. I'm not.
I need the shirt on the outside.
I'm not your tour guide.
He's
I
talking
have
about
a
this one.
question. I have a question from the devil. The devil keeps telling me, Bob, he keeps telling me, yeah, but the problem is Bob has never read the Bible. I tell all my seminarian students when I was teaching at a seminary, I told all of them the first day of class, I said,
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Put that right there.
oh, is this a hearing device? Sorry,
Yeah,
Bob,
no.
sorry. I tell my seminary students the first day of class, you've never read the Bible, and they all give me a dirty look, Bob.
Well, I know where you're
They
going
all
with
give
this.
me a dirty look. Well, let me go there. I'm a classical
why go
philologist.
there? I know where
This is
you're going.
why the Harvard people won't come. I'm a
Classical philology doesn't necessarily help you here because Koine Greek, I don't think falls within that category, although I might be mistaken. Maybe the experts can correct me here, but I don't think it necessarily prepares you for Koine Greek, which is what the New Testament is written in.
classical philologist.
I know what you are. Watch the videos.
And you have never read the Bible. Tell me what a Christ
Okay.
is.
Okay.
What is a Christ?
I'm not going to tell you that.
Because you don't know,
No,
Bob.
no.
Which is sad. I mean, see, here he could easily just put this to rest. Go ahead and address it. A Christ is an anointed one who is anointed with oil in the Old Testament. Now, Ammon will probably try to argue that the root word for Messiah or anointed one in the Old Testament actually has different connotations, and but at least offer just some basic definition like that. If he wants to offer some kind of peculiar definition, that's his problem. But by not even giving a basic definition, it makes Bob look bad.
Wait a minute.
What is a Christ?
Wait a minute. I did not agree.
How is he supposed to believe? If you don't know what a
did
Christ is
not
or what a
agree to
gospel
this.
is, that's why the people at Harvard.
And
Just offer a basic definition of Mashiach in the Old Testament. That's all you got to do.
I will either get up and walk out of here.
Okay, why? Because cowardice? If I'm possessed,
Let's be
you
respectful.
should not.
Let's be respectful.
No,
of
he
today's
just-
text.
No,
Okay,
no,
okay,
he's
We
not.
gotta be
He's-
nice to each
Okay,
other.
I'm
We gotta be
sorry.
nice. That's the
I'm
only.
sorry.
That's the only way this is
We
gonna.
do
This is
have
gonna
to.
happen.
Understood. Understood.
Okay.
Now,
Let's just discuss the
Yes.
facts, the text, and everything we're
Okay.
here discussing. Let's not call each other names or be rude.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay, is that okay, Bob?
I was thinking as I stepped out of the room a moment ago that it would be a good idea. Where are you in New Mexico?
I'm in Taos, New Mexico.
Taos. Of course, why not? The
right
New
off
capital of New Mexico.
Right off of no. I'm not into any hippie stuff. I can't stand hippies.
Okay.
But I've been
So I would
studying Greek
suggest-
and the Bible for the last 35 years. That's
I-
all
I know
talk
what you've
about.
done.
I
I
want
know.
to talk about the Bible.
I would suggest
Yes.
that to really have a
Just to correct this, some think he is a priest, but he is not a priest. In the Catholic Church, he is a non-denominational. I'm sorry, let me correct that echo. I apologize. It should be fixed now. I'm sorry, I still have the speakers on. He is not a Catholic priest. He, from what I could tell, is a non-denominational exorcist. So he does wear a clerical collar and present himself, in many cases, what people would get the impression of to be as a Catholic priest, but he is a non-denominational guy. Okay, let's go ahead and continue.
candid conversation. No cameras. You get in your car and drive down to Phoenix,
Yeah, but that makes you look like a coward.
and I will be happy to spend time with you. Normally, we ask for a donation to help cover my staffing.
Of course,
and
because
facility.
Stop already. Let me stop it right there. First of all, you came here for a discussion. You didn't come here to tell him, let's meet in private so I can give you an exorcism. You came here in person for a discussion for $5,000, by the way. That comes out towards the end. He did come there for $5,000, which I thought was incredibly offensive. Don't come there for money. Just come there and do what you need to do. But yeah, for some reason he wanted $5,000 for the discussion. That is Bob Larson. And that looks bad. And then now add on top of it, you're saying normally I require a donation for people to come and meet with me to perform these exorcisms. Seriously, dude? No, that's known as the sin of simony, selling spiritual goods for money. This sounds really scamish. This sounds very fraudulent whenever you have to tell people, yeah, I can do a deliverance or an exorcism for you, but normally I require a donation to pay for my staff and all this and that. Excuse me? What? That right there is a massive red flag. If you knew nothing else about Bob Larson, that should be a massive red flag for you.
Greedy, Bob. It's flim flam.
But
You got to be nice. Listen,
I will be
you gotta
happy.
nice.
Oh, God.
I will be
Put the
happy.
devil back.
I will be happy to provide you with a complimentary exorcism session,
No, thank you.
But
I
it-
don't have a
but-
demon,
but
Bob.
wait a minute.
I wanted to talk about the Bible. I don't have a demon. I'm
which
not
would
here.
be
First of all,
to talk
wait.
about a
We
demon.
have to appreciate the fact that Bob is the only one who has the balls to come in here and talk to you.
For $5,000. Just adding that for $5,000, and he doesn't actually talk to him. He doesn't really do what he was supposed to do, and that is get into a discussion to refute Ammon. He doesn't do that. He just kind of asks a few general questions, makes a few personal ad hominem attacks against Ammon, and that was about it. So no, I don't think that he had the courage to come there. I think that he got the $5,000, and he didn't really have to do a whole lot for it. Let's continue.
Oh, that's kudos. Big balls.
No one else will do
Kudos.
it.
Nobody, Bob. This was Harvard
Okay,
people.
okay,
This
so-
was Harvard.
Hang on, let him go, let him
Who
go.
else?
But you're not letting me talk.
Let him talk.
You're not
Please, go
letting
ahead,
me.
go ahead,
You're not. You're trying to control the agenda. So
No, that's
just
why
let,
I'm here.
Let me finish speaking. Where
And let me add, I think I know why the Harvard professors don't want to have a conversation with Ammon. You'll find out why. And I don't think it's because they're afraid or unable to. I think you'll see why here in a moment.
it's just you and me, and maybe a ministry associate there with me, and we have a candid conversation about you and your life and your beliefs, and I'm very happy to do that. But that would have to be in a setting where there's transparency and honesty, and we can have an exchange without playing to the galleries.
Yes, definitely. That's a great,
so
wonderful
let's-
idea. If I were demon possessed, Bob, but I'm not demon
Well,
possessed, and I
wait a
don't
minute.
need your spiritual help. I was coming to you as one former man of God.
Why does he talk like that? I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of him, but it's a little odd, right? And he's like this the whole time. Evidently, that's how he always talks. And I don't understand. I don't know why.
To another
No,
person
no,
who
no, no.
appreciates the Bible, Bob. And I just
You're
want to know.
trying.
Dude pulled out the Nestle Allen text. What is that? The NA28? I think they're up to the 28th edition now. Greek New Testament Critical Edition. He says, that's the Bible, Bob. You can't read it.
Please tell me, why was
You-
Jesus
this
arrested
is the
in a
reason
public
I
park
didn't
with a
want you
naked
around
kid?
in this room when I talked with him, is because you're a control freak trying to get the upper hand on everything. So just be a
One
human.
answer. That's the
Just-
only question
Just
I'll ask
talk
you.
to me.
That's it.
Talk to me as a human being.
Just
Okay.
ask him
Do you
kindly
think
what
it's
your question
possible?
is.
Do you think
As
it's
a human
possible?
being.
When,
Okay.
When Jesus was arrested in
I-
Gethsemane with a naked kid,
I-
screaming, "I'm not a child."
We know
or
what you
lace
think
days.
about. Okay.
Could it
Okay,
be
okay,
that he was
listen, we
actually?
both have
I'm
turns.
about
All right, this is where he gets really wild. And this is a outrageous claim he's making about Jesus. That Jesus was a PDF file. And we're going to have to attack this head on because it's a very slanderous accusation. But he's arguing that the biblical text in Greek demonstrates that in the Gospel of Mark. Again, whether or not this stuff should be entertained, this is already in society. The claims are being made, and because it's being entertained in society, it's necessary now to respond to them. And Bob Larson does not respond to them, unfortunately. So that's what we're going to do.
with a naked kid,
I-
screaming, "I'm not a child."
we know
or
what you
lace
think
days.
about. Okay.
Could it
Okay,
be that
okay,
he was
listen, we
actually?
both have
I'm
turns.
about 30 seconds from walking out of
We
here.
have to take
Okay.
turns. I'm gonna ask the question, and then we have to stop, and we have to let Bob give his response.
That's reasonable.
Okay,
when
go
when
ahead.
Jesus Christ was arrested in Gethsemane at 4 a.m. with a naked boy screaming, "I am not a child," or lace days in Greek, could it actually be, Bob, that he was kind of doing creepy things?
Bob, the stage is yours.
Are you suggesting that Christ was a pedophile?
No, I'm saying.
Are
the
you
text-
saying that he was a pedophile?
No,
Are
I'm
you saying
the
that?
text says that Jesus
Are
Christ?
you saying that Christ was a filed
No,
Yes, he actually is saying that. But uh, Bob needs to address this head on instead of just saying, "Are you really saying this?" and then never refuting it.
based upon what you think the text said.
I think what
I'm
he's
not.
saying is no. He doesn't believe that he's not stating his own beliefs.
No,
what
I've
he's
Actually, he has, but okay.
saying is he is repeating.
That's-
I'm not interested in argument. I'm saying
okay.
the text. I want the real Jesus.
That
When Jesus
is
was arrested-
intellectual dishonesty, and you know it, and you're not going to overpower me the way you normally do people. It's no wonder nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you are suggesting in any way, shape, or form on any evidentiary basis that you have in your mind
Yeah.
that Christ did that, there's no dialogue that we can have.
Well, you see, that's the problem. Bob right there failed. Whether you want to have a dialogue with this person or not, you need to respond to refute the claim, period, end of story. Because here's why. If you don't, there will be people who are misled and will actually believe what this philologist is saying. That's the problem. That's the issue. So before we move further, we are going to have to take a quick detour and review this. So you have in Mark 48. Here is what he is referring to, because he doesn't lay it out very clearly here. But here's what Ammon is referring to. Mark 9:48. Am I leading a rebellion, Jesus said, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. Then everyone deserted him and fled. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Based on this, what he wants to do is he wants to attempt to read the Koine Greek of this text from the New Testament. Obviously, the Bible, the New Testament, was not written in English. It was written in Greek. He wants to read this as Jesus saying, not, am I leading a rebellion? He's going to argue the Greek term behind rebellion here, lestes, he's going to argue is a child trafficker. So in other words, he's going to portray Jesus as saying, are you accusing me of being a PDF file? And then he's saying, you know, he's in a garden at night praying, and evidently there was a young man here. He's going to argue linguistically that the young man here is a, I think he's going to argue slightly more than not prepubescent, but maybe 13 to 15 years old or so, somewhere around there. A young man who is not following Jesus. He's going to argue that the term here for following Jesus is actually attached to Jesus, meaning like is one of his traffic slaves or whatever, and that he had a garment, not a garment on, but a bandage on his member, and that he fled away naked. And so he's going to then suggest that Jesus was caught in a park at 4 a.m. With a naked young man who had a bandaged whatever, and he was someone that was being trafficked, and Jesus's first claim is that, are you claiming I'm a PDF file? Okay, so what he does is he plays around with the Greek text of Mark 14:48 through 52. He plays around with the terms, and what he will try to do is he'll try to say, well, this Greek term could be translated this way, but it could also be translated that way. And the reason why all the biblical translators don't translate it like I do is because they're biased and this and that. And he'll try to make an argument, therefore, that his understanding and his interpretation, linguistic interpretation, is correct. And in reality, no linguist in the area, no expert in the field is going to agree with his translation of the biblical text or his conclusions that he's making here. So it's not as if you have to be some kind of massive expert in languages here to really know that he's wrong. But you could simply just look to the authorities and those who have a command in the field, and even they, even the non-Christian ones, are not going to conclude the things that he claims linguistically. And so, but for those of you who do know New Testament Greek, Koine Greek, you will likely know enough at the very least to know that these are not only peculiar translations, they are such a stretch when it comes to the semantic domain range. Like, it's such a stretch that it's just incredibly unbelievable. And there's a reason why nobody else really came to the conclusion that this is what was happening with Jesus and the young man who flees without his garments. But don't take my word for it. First of all, let's hear where Ammon does make this outrageous claim. It's not that he's just asking a question. It's not like one of those things where, hey, bro, I'm just asking a question. No, he does hold to the thesis that Jesus was a PDF file. You'll see that here in this video I'm about to show you. And then let's actually watch some linguistic experts briefly refute him on this point before we continue with the debate review. So let me share my screen and let's proceed. First of all, you'll hear Ammon making the claim about Jesus.
If you don't think Jesus Christ was the biggest drug user on the planet, you have not read the original, right?
Something tells me that Ammon is a big-time drug user. Going out on a limb here, but something tells me, maybe it's his voice, maybe it's his behavior, mannerisms, thought process, endorsement of drugs, promotion of drugs. Something tells me he's a heavy drug user. Okay.
Every title is a drug title. And by the way, I just want to set the record straight, Hamilton.
Okay.
We all know that Jesus Christ was arrested in a public park at 4 a.m. with a naked boy. And the first thing that came out of Jesus's mouth is, I am not a child trafficker.
Okay, so he does make that claim, right? It's not that he's just asking questions. He really does believe that this is what happened with Jesus in Mark 9:48 through 52, which is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's so laughably stupid that I don't know why anybody has taken him seriously, but because he has gotten so many views, he has got so much attention, it's necessary then to refute him. So let's go ahead and refute the stupidity that we just heard there. So let's actually go to an expert in the field. And let's briefly see what they have to say.
I have a short list of a few things that he claims.
Let me slow that down. Sorry, I listen to everything at 2 times speed. Let's try this.
The first one is, it's all focused in Mark 14, right? So Mark 14, 51, and 52, there's a linchpin here where he basically translates a particular passage of this text that we can discuss a little bit. So in Greek, it's kenianiskostis, so in some young man, sinakoluthi so is following Jesus, or perivevlimenos syndona, so wrapped in a cloth, epihymnou, around his naked body. Και κρατούσαν αυτόν, ο δεκατελιπών την σύντονα γυμνός έφυγαν. So when they go to apprehend the boy, his garment falls off and he runs away naked. So Dr. Hillman has a particular translation of this, which is basically that the young boy was assigned to him, sinakoluthi αυτό, and he believes that this is in some way, suggests that Jesus was trafficking this boy.
And thank you for the super chat here. The guy running out of the tent being interpreted that way actually comes from Hindu-Christian debates in India, but nobody knows Greek there, so it's laughed out by everyone. Again, you're listening to an expert on the Greek text, so don't speak too soon, but I appreciate the super chat.
He wasn't just molesting the boy. That this language somehow is insinuating a deeper sort of sinister nature of this. Having wrapped his penis with a medicated bandage, right? So the claim is based on the fact that the sindon, that is effectively, it's translated as garment. And the funny thing is that in the interview with Danny Jones, when they pull up the entry from the LSJ, there is clearly a definition under it that says garment.
A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus when they seized him. That's all it says.
Yeah. Now look at the Greek.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it says, a young boy was assigned to him, having wrapped his with a medicated bandage, and they arrested him.
A medicated bandage is what it says.
Syndon. Yeah, I've got the.
Okay, so I'm comparing
got the-
yours to what this one says. So
The entry from the LSJ, there is clearly a definition under it that says garment. But he literally says that that is an incompetent, incorrect translation, because you can find this linen, the syndon, linen cloth, referenced in other passages outside of the Bible to a bandage.
no text, and this right here is the translation that we have right now, which is I'll punch it up for people. Nothing but a linen garment.
Yeah, notice how they took it from a bandage and turned it into
Who did this? Who's responsible for this?
crappy translators.
Because sometimes linen cloths were used as bandages. So his logic, like if you really follow his logic, it's that you can find texts where the linen cloth is used as a bandage.
And surgeons' bandages.
And bandages, and that's where I get it. On my end, when I'm reading the medical authors, they're all saying that you impregnate linen.
Therefore, it can't be translated as garment. In this context, it must be a bandage that was wrapped around epihimnu, around his around his penis. So
but it also means shroud.
Shroud, and yes, Jesus' shroud that was wrapped around his entire body is the exact same word.
Yeah.
And so,
all right, look, anybody who knows anything about languages knows there could be a wide range, a semantic domain, a wide range in which you can translate words, and so it could be translated as a medical bandage, a shroud, all sorts of things, a garment. Contextually, context is going to be key. How then do you know? Well, you first of all look how the author tends to use a term. You look how terms were used at that time, not hundreds of years prior or later in Greek. You look how that term was used at that time and by that author, and also contextually, and that will then determine how you translate something. And that's why nobody has come to the conclusions that Ammon has come to. He's capitalizing on people's ignorance and a potential ability to translate things this way, but they're so implausible that nobody would ever translate them this way, because they're not believable or reasonable translations. But because the average person doesn't really know anything about Koine Greek or just how language works or interpretation of biblical texts, they're going to fall prey to this kind of stupidity and think that there's an actual argument here.
that is a problem that he doesn't address. He would probably not like to address it, or he would just say that, okay, well, in that context it works. But in this context, he wants to basically say that the neaniskos implies, because it is a diminutive of the word neanis, the young man, it means that he is a prepubescent boy. That's the first thing. And you know, there are other instances of pediska or paidiska or pediski in other forms of Greek, which is a diminutive of pes, and he believes that also refers to underage prepubescent female prostitutes. So he draws the connection there. That basically, if you're using a diminutive form, like what would you say? What's an example in English of a diminutive?
The lesser.
Yeah. So it's like I don't know, a boy and like a little boy, right? Yeah. So he's saying that this is a little boy. That sindon is a linen bandage that is impregnated with drugs. This is his words. And that crappy translators, people who do not use Greek, who do not work with the Greek, took it from a bandage and turned it into a garment in an act of intentional stupidity as a result of their bad training. And that epihimnu means around his private parts and not around his naked body. And it's debatable whether or not he was actually full-blown nude under the garments, or if he was like in undergarments, or what nude actually means in this context is also debatable. But that's sort of the baseline of his argument around that particular verse in that particular section of Mark 14.
Now, skipping ahead a little bit to address the claim that Jesus claims he's not a PDF file, that's going to be addressed here, skipping ahead just a little bit.
"You did not seize me, but let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all left him and fled. And a young man followed him, right? Like just out of the blue, a young man appears and follows him. Before that, it's very clear that what Jesus is saying is that, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? This is something that Dr. Hillman makes a really big deal about, is the word listis, or lestes, or he says lestes. He believes that a lestes or a listis is a pirate that was basically, it implies a human trafficker. because back then those bandits or robbers or however it gets translated, the underlying term listis implies that the person was engaged in human trafficking and child molestation. Just by the very fact that Jesus is saying, well, have you come out against me as if I am a lestes, right? Jesus is denying being a lestes, but he's saying it in the context of, have you come out against me with swords and clubs to capture me? So my reading of this, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, is that what Jesus is saying is that why did you bring the cavalry? Basically, why did you roll up on me with all these, like, with weapons, as if I were a violent perpetrator of if I were a violent criminal? You don't need to do that to me. I've been in the temple. You could have seized me a long time ago. This is an undue use of force in this arrest. Like that's what he's objecting to. He's not saying you're coming at me as if I'm a human trafficking child molester, right? There's no connection here between the young boy and Jesus's activity and his status and his denying the fact that he's a lestes. I think the context of what Mark means by this word is very, very clear, and I don't think that Dr. Hillman has a license to extend that meaning so far.
The word really is used as criminal.
Yes.
And we don't know what the crime is. And Jesus is saying, I'm not a criminal.
Yeah.
And again, I could give you a Homeric background to that, but we don't need to go there at this point.
Would a Homeric background even really be relevant, right? I mean, the Greek that's used at the time of the composition of maybe the Iliad or something like that, is that really relevant to Koine New Testament Greek in first century? Likely not. When was Homer originally composed? What was it, 8th century BC? I don't know. It's been a while, but it's certainly going to be a different kind of Greek than Koine Greek. So I'm not exactly sure that would even be relevant anyway. But in other words, you can see that he's taking a great deal of liberty, to say the least, in how he is personally interpreting the text. And this is why nobody has really come to the same conclusions as Ammon. But let's proceed.
I'm still willing to meet with you in private, where there's no need for you to have to play to an audience and no need for me to prove anything to anybody.
He didn't have to come there and accept the $5,000 to tell Ammon that. He could have told that to Ammon via email. Why come here if you're not actually going to engage him? Unless it was for the money.
Have you read this, Bob? Have you actually read the Bible?
Okay, you're just a broken record.
No. I want to talk about the text.
You honestly don't possess the intellectual latitude to move outside of a predetermined frame of reference where you can beat your drum, and I'm not going to buy into that, okay?
That honestly sounds like projection. I don't think that Bob actually has the intellectual latitude to engage Ammon's stupidity here. And that's part of the problem. Why come to this if you're not prepared, other than to receive that $5,000 check?
You're not.
Is that me or the demon?
Why are you questioning? Yeah. Why are you questioning whether or not Bob has read the Bible?
Because
what do you think?
Because
if there's possible he missed something, what do you think that is?
Because Bob does what Bible scholars always do, and New Testament theologians, divinity degrees, they don't have access to that ground-based material.
What is he talking about? Every New Testament scholar I know knows Greek 1,000 times better than this guy. Is he serious?
And you're referring to the original sources,
to the philology. They don't have access to the text.
Well,
right?
what we have here.
Okay, hold on.
Well,
who is he engaging? Is he engaging like really low grade Christian apologists or something? Most actual bona fide New Testament scholars have a great command of New Testament Greek, a better command of Greek than Ammon. End of story, period. That's indisputable.
We have here is you against the world, you against 2,000 years of church history.
Oh, he stepped in it. Bob stepped in it there. I'm sorry. I have to interject at this point. I got to say something here. 2,000 years of church history, you say, Bob? Bob is a non-denominational pastor. I'm just saying, 2,000 years of church history. Well, there's quite a few things that Bob doesn't believe that are attested by 2,000 years of church history. So to pull out that standard against Ammon now, to try to pull that card out, when he doesn't live up to it himself. I'm quite certain every Catholic and every Eastern Orthodox watching right now is laughing, thinking, church history, you say, Bob, and you're a non-denominational evangelical pastor. Yeah, let's talk about church history, Bob. What about apostolic succession, baptismal regeneration, real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, and all those things that are testified to in 2,000 years of church history? What about that? You don't hold to any of that. You don't have apostolic succession. You don't have an episcopate. You don't have the real presence. You don't have sacraments. You don't have X, Y, and Z. And so it seems to me he's desperate to try to respond to Ammon, but he's not prepared. He doesn't know how to respond. And in fairness, how could he? He is dealing already with a pretty big handicap here, a very limited perspective coming from that evangelical background. So he doesn't have a whole lot of tools or weapons in his arsenal to respond to begin with. He already has one hand tied behind his back, but he could have used that other hand to knock Ammon out, but he didn't. Instead, he went here, and I don't think that really helped him. But okay, let's proceed.
You against the most esteemed scholars in the world, and quite frankly, I don't think you match up, and I'm not willing to have that debate because it's a dishonest debate.
What's a Christ?
In my
Just tell me
opinion.
that.
Okay. No, I know where you're going with that, and there's no point.
Why,
in
Bob? You
debating.
tell,
You're
you tell
asking about
everybody
the-
what a Christ is. You
So-
just converted this man.
Just tell me.
What is a Christ?
No, we didn't convert him. What we did was to nudge him along the pathway.
I just
Yes.
gave up. I just gave myself to Christ.
Yeah.
I just
What is
I'm
Christ?
open,
You
I'm
You
open
did
my
give
heart
a
to Christ.
measure of your life to Christ, and that is a great step to take.
So Ammon
Now-
told me, and 2 million people on my podcast, most of which believe what he is saying, because we have no way of discerning whether he's lying or not. We have no way of finding out reading these texts. But the way Ammon described it to us, and there's millions of views on this stuff, that the word Christ in ancient Greek, the first time the word Christ was ever used in the history of humanity was for somebody that was using drugs.
Okay, well, that's the gospel.
But first of all, I don't think that's accurate. But even if it was, that has nothing to do with the contextual interpretation or meaning of the Greek term for anointed one found in the Old Testament, which you'll find especially in 1 Samuel, where Samuel anoints Saul king. You'll see that term used there. What that means there contextually has nothing to do with how that term was first originally used, right? I mean, I just think about it like this. If I were to say that's cool, you probably know what I mean. That's awesome. But is that how the word cool was first used? When it was first used in history, did the word cool mean awesome? Probably not. It may have had something to do with temperature. It may have had something to do with something else. I don't know. I've never looked into the origin of the term. However, I suspect it had nothing to do with something being awesome, right? I think we know that that's certainly the case. So how the term was originally used means nothing with how it's being used right now contextually in this particular text. This is why it's a red herring, and it's pretty easy to refute this stuff. You don't have to be an expert in languages to understand this. All right, but let's continue.
According to Ammon.
No, not the gospel. He's
no.
text
That's
earlier.
the gospel according to him. That's what I'm saying. All right.
No, that was divorce officially.
So we're going to discard the canonization of Scripture, all the councils of the church that have been held throughout the ages, at great time, effort, and intellectual energy to go through all of these issues over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see how long it took me to address that? What, 10 minutes, maybe? You don't have to spend all this time and energy, Bob. Just spend the 10 minutes that you could have spent instead of just ad hominem attacks against Ammon, which is pretty easy to do, in fairness. Instead of going that route, you could have spent that 10 minutes just refuting the guy.
And we're just going to, because of this guy, throw them out the window and say they don't matter anymore because I am the Greek scholar who knows the truth.
I don't think we need
I
to
don't
throw
buy that.
anything out the window.
No,
All I'm
we-
looking
yes,
for.
Yes, we are.
I'm not personally, and I
Well,
know you're not.
but he is.
I don't think.
But
I
he
think it's
is.
okay that he is. I think it's okay that he is. But I
And
don't
he's,
think.
he's entitled to have his position.
Of course.
Of course.
So are you, and so am I. But
And-
my goal here
and-
is to just have a dialogue. No one's willing to have this dialogue, and I think it's freaking incredible that we're able to have
not
this
having a dialogue. We're not
We're
having a
attempting to have
dialogue,
a dialogue here.
because he is stuck like a politician.
All right, this dude, Danny Jones here. Let me maybe give you an analogy. He's like, nobody wants to have this dialogue. Well, think about it, Danny. How often would you like, Danny? How often would you like to have a dialogue about your parents being child molesters? If somebody accused your parents of being child molesters, which I'm not saying they are. I have no idea who Danny is or who his parents are. But if somebody accused Danny's parents of being child molesters, and they wanted to have that dialogue and conversation with Danny, how willing would Danny be to have that conversation? Probably not very willing, let alone in public. Do you think Danny would want to have a conversation about whether or not his parents molested him? That's how offensive this conversation is about Mark chapter 9. But since this kind of stupidity has already been entertained and promoted by Danny Jones, people have to now respond to it, which is what we've done today. But he shouldn't marvel at why people don't want to have this conversation, because Danny would likely not entertain anybody having a conversation about whether his parents are child molesters.
It's incredible that
We're
able to have
not
this
having a dialogue. We're not having
we're
a
attempting to have
dialogue,
a dialogue here.
because he is stuck like a politician on talking points, and he is going to stay there and not move off of that to deal with the larger realm of church history, the Hebrew scriptures, as well as the Septuagint.
Do
which
you
he
read the Septuagint,
disdains.
Bob?
And so, as a result of that,
Answer: no, Bob cannot read the Septuagint. But it's also not necessary to refute this philology. It's not necessary.
he's got a couple of basic talking points, and he's just going to keep throwing those out there over and over and over.
Do you
which
actually
is,
read the
which is
Septuagint,
which is
Bob?
intellectually dishonest.
Do you read the
What
Bible?
I would
or the
like-
Septuagint?
What I would
I
like,
know you're going to get up and leave because you're a
What-
coward.
what-
But the devil
Let him
asked me to
answer.
ask you,
Okay.
have you actually read the Septuagint?
if I hear one more ad hominem argument, this
Who do
is
you
over.
think you are?
Okay.
You want to walk out? Take the money and walk. Take it and walk. You're a coward. You don't read these texts, and people just like you are afraid. The head of Dallas Theological Seminary's Greek program wouldn't come here, Bob, and sit where you are.
May I
because
ask a
none
question?
of you actually reads ancient Greek.
May I ask a
Yes,
question?
Yes,
Yes.
it's your turn. It's your turn.
You are a self-confessed former Christian.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
you were born again.
Definitely.
Huh?
Definitely.
Okay. And then at some point, you walked away from that.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay.
You're
okay.
right.
Now, without trying to make it sound like Greek and Hebrew had you walk away from it, can you tell me what that negative epiphany was?
Yes, it was.
Maybe I'm going to skip this part because it is a little graphic, but basically his story is that he was reading Aristotle, realized how beautiful Aristotle's Greek was, pitted that against the New Testament, and then he decided to go and fornicate with a woman and lose his virginity. And he felt that that was a freeing moment because he felt very suppressed as a Christian who was not allowed to do those things. He felt that it was great to free himself sexually. And so, yeah, that's kind of that. So let's skip ahead a little bit to where we get into a more meaningful part of the conversation.
Do I know J. Vernon McGee? Bless his dearly departed soul. Of course I know who
Definitely.
he was.
So you
What a man.
You,
That was a man.
Well, yes, he had a lot of theological prejudices, but that's not the issue.
He was,
So
he
let
was
me
not a pervert, though. That guy was straight up.
Let me understand this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Born again Christian.
Yeah.
Loving Jesus.
Yes.
As I understand, admiring me and what I did.
Yes. I used
Okay,
to
okay,
listen to you,
okay,
Bob.
okay.
let him interrogate you.
Sorry, am I
And
telling
then,
No, you're good. You're good.
and
You're doing great.
then Aristotle's view of reality, of good and evil, of the cosmos and how it exists and why it exists, turns you around. You go to a bar and then get laid and it felt good.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Exactly.
Okay. Guilty as charged
Of what?
of apostasy. That obviously,
But with
you-
demon or not?
obviously, in my opinion, you turned. You made a moral U-turn. Remember I said earlier, people don't have as much of an intellectual objection to the gospel as they have a moral objection to the gospel.
I don't know what he's talking about. There's plenty of people who have intellectual objections to the Gospels, but okay.
I rest my case. You had a moral objection. and you decided to go down that path, which was contrary to the path that preceded you,
Correct.
to which you were very devoted.
Oh God, I used to jerk off and get so depressed because Jesus was watching me jerk off. And I knew it was bad, man. I knew it was bad.
Did that affect you? Like, did
Oh,
that
wait
have
a minute.
Did that
Wait a
have
Oh
minute,
yeah,
wait a minute,
every
wait a
time
minute.
I was coming home
We
from
don't-
college and I looked up at the billboard, they had
At this point, we
Hooters
don't
thing, and I was
need
like,
to
oh.
know about your masturbation practices.
Well, he was saying
I
that.
thought you-
I think the reason he was explaining that was because he felt like he was sinning by actually going out and having sex with a woman. So
Correct.
he had to masturbate, and he said I think what he's
Yeah,
expressed.
okay.
He felt guilty of that.
Okay.
Yeah, the guilt of
So
masturbation.
finally, you dispelled that guilt by,
Yes.
by going out and
Right,
having
just
sexual
spelling.
intercourse.
I just spelled it all night long.
And
So did that make him-
You sinned and you loved it,
Definitely.
and it's been downhill ever since.
No, that was the beginning of my training. It's been glorious.
Okay.
So your life has been better since you left Christ.
Oh God, if you can't find Aphrodite, right? Christianity blocks you from Aphrodite, right?
How-
and
how
that's
so?
a whole part of existence, the Great Mother. It's why you can't worship a Great Mother in Christianity.
Why can't you worship? Is that true? You can't worship.
I'm sure Protestants would have something to say about Catholic devotion and Eastern Orthodox devotion to the Virgin Mary there. Of course, from the Catholic perspective, there is no worship of the Virgin Mary, but I'm surprised Bob Larson didn't jump on that one at that point.
Worship a great mother.
Well, this could get rather interesting. I've been to Ephesus. I've seen the statues of Aphrodite, which is this goddess with multiple breasts.
That's Artemis.
That's Artemis, but it's also Aphrodite.
No, it's not. Artemis is a virgin.
They're
Artemis is a virgin.
They're basically interchangeable.
No. You have sex in the
Okay,
temple of
let him go. It's okay,
Aphrodite.
it's okay.
That's a big distinction. You can't say Artemis
with
is
this pendulent breast hanging from her.
Yes, Artemis.
And it was in front of statues like this that the maidens were deflowered to become advocates of the goddess. I mean, there's all sorts of hideous stuff.
Okay.
But it's almost all of it. The Greeks were highly sexualized.
Yes. Right.
And
Yeah. I think
this
he made
is
that
what
pretty
they
clear.
did, and this is what the culture was based on, and then this is what he bought into. So this part of the conversation has been helpful to me to understand. But what nationality are you?
Oh God, just a mixture. Just a whole bunch of some Dutch ancestors, some German, some Scottish.
Why is everything like he describes everything as some massive epiphany? Oh gosh, just Dutch and like everything's this huge divine revelation. It's like, dude, they just asked you about your ancestry. Relax. What's going on? I again get the impression he has been exposed to some very potent drugs.
I don't know. People just loved, man.
Dutch, German, Scot.
Yeah.
Is that basically it?
No, supposedly there may be some native in there as well, but you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, to me, as an exorcist, consistent with what you're telling me.
How so?
No Scandinavian though.
Well, thank God he doesn't have the Vikings you did.
Yeah.
By the
How
way, I
so?
should have had you break that curse. So I think what we're talking about here, in my estimation, as an exorcist, is that the currents that he has just described was not as epiphanous in a negative sense as we might think of it. It was the end result of a process that was intergenerational and probably going back to these ancestries. And there is something highly sexualized and debaucherous back there that was looking for a way to work itself through. And it found a victim, and he was that victim. And unfortunately, he did what he did. But I would
I'm not
like to
victim,
say,
Bob.
I want to
All
make one.
people experience that?
I just want to
Yeah.
finish by saying,
Okay.
of Christ is that even Ammon could return to the fold and become an advocate for the grace and the mercy of God.
Well, that won't happen as long as Bob refuses to actually refute Ammon. So just saying, if that was your intention and desire for this guy, you would think that he would at least attempt to refute him.
Paul killed Christians. 2 thieves were crucified with Jesus. 1 repented.
Oh, they were thieves.
I do not. What?
The thieves were crucified on both sides.
One repented, 1 didn't. I'm just saying that I marvel at the grace of God that even you could return to faith in Christ. I don't know what it would take. I don't know how it could happen. I'd be happy.
It could happen. You'd
I
have to explain to me.
I would love to
Like
play
those
some part
thieves.
in that process.
Like those thieves. It doesn't say they're thieves, Bob.
But-
It
but-
says they're child.
but
people
you
worthy of death in
right now, the
according to
problem-
Roman law.
the problem as I see it is that you've dug such a deep hole by being so vehement in your opposition to historic Christianity as we know it and 2,000 years of church history.
Oh, there it goes again. There it goes again. There it goes again. A Protestant evangelical pastor talking about 2,000 years of church history. I'm left scratching my head literally right now, which it's incidental because I actually did need to scratch my head right now, but also rhetorically, I'm left scratching my head because I'm wondering how that works for an evangelical who clearly rejects certain aspects that are attested to by 2,000 years of church history. That's just an odd standard that he himself doesn't maintain.
Ship around.
Bob, do you understand?
God is powerful and God could do it.
Yeah.
So my perspective, and I think a lot of people listening to this, hear the history of the word laestes and the translations of the word laestes, which Julius Caesar famously called the guys that kidnapped him, the pirates that kidnapped him and held ransom for him. He crucified them and he called them publicly laestes, right? These guys were people who kidnapped a child, Julius Caesar when he was a child. So when you see Jesus saying, being caught in this scene in the Bible in the public park with the kid, and he goes, I'm not a laestes, I'm not a laestes. And then 8 hours later, he's crucified, which is what happens to
Jesus didn't say that. Mark 9:48, as we saw, we already went through Mark 9:48. He didn't say, I'm not a laestes. He didn't say, I'm not a pedophile. That's not what he said. This dude, Danny, is just repeating Ammon as if it's gospel truth.
people who are kidnapping children.
That's the gospel according to Ammon.
No. But that's the true history of what happened to Julius
it's not
Caesar.
the true. Well, it is not the true history.
That's not what happened to Julius Caesar?
Why don't you consult independent scholars about those questions?
I've asked independent scholars about the history
now
of
you've
Julius
asked
Caesar.
them to be on your show, but
No, this is off the show. This is private conversations I've had.
No, okay, well, I would suggest that you do that. So it's
That has nothing to do with how the term is being used in the New Testament. Even if it is conceivable, even if the term laestes has such a wide range that it could mean one who is in rebellion or a thief or a child trafficker, even if it has that kind of wide range, that doesn't tell you how it's being used in Mark 9:48. Only context will tell you that. And then again, what was the context of him saying that? Is it the presence of the boy who fled? No, because this was actually said prior to that and not because of that. So I think it would be pretty easy to respond to this even if you're not an expert in languages. And I just am left wondering why Bob didn't even attempt to do so. He grabbed that check at the end, though.
I understand. Were you dismissed from Dallas Theological Seminary?
No, I left. I went and saw the president. I left, and I told him, I said, your program's not what it's up. It's not up to standard as it was under J. Vernon McGee. And he agreed to me. This is Walford. He said, I know that.
He said that?
Your Greek program is terrible. It's fallen off.
Okay, but
and at that
I would
point, I already had a
suggest
bachelor's, so it was a waste of time.
I would suggest you take that question to a conservative seminary like Dallas.
He did to Dallas.
And there are...
Wouldn't I want to take that to an unbiased source? Because by definition, somebody...
Sure, go to a non-Christian expert in Koine Greek. Go to a non-Christian expert and ask them if Ammon's translation of Mark 9:48 through 52 is legitimate. Just go and ask that non-Christian expert. You don't have to go to a Christian here.
Who's in a seminary is going to be biased.
You're taking this from a bias.
I agree.
So they're all going to be. Everybody's biased.
I'd ask people who are in the middle of this, though, people who aren't on the religious side, people who think Ammon is full of shit. I've talked to people who think he's completely full of shit, and I asked them about this history of Julius Caesar and crucifying laestes and the word laestes being used, and they can agree on that. They don't necessarily agree with his theories, but they do agree on that principle.
Okay.
So well, that's what I'm.
They agree the term could be translated that way. Do they agree that the term is properly translated that way in Mark 9:48? The answer to that would be no. No.
I'm just asking, do you understand my position, why
I
I'm
understand
skeptical?
your position. You're not a Greek scholar.
You understand why I'm skeptical, though? How can I be a Greek scholar?
I understand that because you've been tainted by him.
Hey, now you're getting aggressive.
Okay.
I love it, Bob.
And he's not credible.
Oh,
okay.
So he does have a PhD in classical philology.
Well, but he appears to, and he, he wants to be considered that, but in the bigger scheme of things,
I do have to point out, just because a person has PhD in front of their name, I can tell you right now, that does not necessarily mean that they're always right. As one who is almost done with my doctorate and one who has had numerous conversations with PhDs. There's obviously some utility to scholarship and expertise. Don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of people who have degrees who say really stupid things. I can tell you that from experience. So yeah. Anyways,
I understand maybe you haven't been able to facilitate the forum that would allow the proper scholars to be here and debate that.
and by the way, I do have to point out his expertise in classical Greek as a philologist does not map onto biblical exegesis nor Koine Greek, New Testament Greek. It does not map on. I mean, it helps, but it's not like because you're an expert in classic Greek and philology, therefore you're an expert in interpretation of Mark and also interpretation of Koine Greek terms. They are not the same thing. You can have an expertise in one area and not be an expert in another. Just because you're an expert in one area doesn't mean you're an expert now in every area.
I think this will open the door to it. Now that you've kind of broken the seal, I think now this will open the door to it.
I do think that somebody who claims to be following Christ, who suddenly throws that overboard for Aristotle and a night of hot sex, is really not credible.
That's what you're basing credibility on?
Yeah.
You realize he can't read this book? You realize he can't read this? This is great, Bob. Would you like to translate for us? Here's the Bible. It's the Bible, Bob. The devil told me to do this. It's the Bible.
He says this is the Bible. There's some people who would dispute that, right? It's a critical edition of the New Testament from Nestle Allen. Some people would dispute whether or not that's actually the Bible, right? There's a whole debate in and of itself. What actually is the Bible? What actually is the New Testament? Does this critical edition somehow tell you what the original autographs said? So yeah, it's a whole debate in and of itself. And he seems to be, Ammon seems to be assuming a lot. Ammon, however you pronounce his name, seems to be assuming a lot there.
Bob,
he thinks the devil's talking to him, Bob.
Watch people. Look at your audience.
He's
Bob,
not talking. He's manifesting demons.
You don't want
he's manifesting demons.
You don't want to play this, Bob. Don't let Danny show the world that you cannot read the fucking Bible. You flim-flamming. That's from the devil. He said,
not from
make sure and get the flim-flamming. Make sure and get the flim-flamming. And he said something about the incubus in your
you're
wife,
digging
too.
your hole deeper, Ammon. You really maybe should stop.
Oh, God. You're afraid.
I do have a question.
They're afraid.
They're afraid. We're doing this to learn. I think we're learning a lot.
May I ask a simple question?
Sure.
Is Ammon your christened name?
It is my third name. It's my second middle name.
Exactly. Yeah. Has anybody called you out on that?
Look, here. It's on my driver's license, Bob.
But it's not your christened name.
What the hell? What does that mean?
Seriously,
what did your parents name you?
My mother gave me 4 names when I was born: David, Charles, Ammon Hillman, and I go by Ammon because David murdered a bunch of people.
Wait. Why did they give you Ammon?
Let's see the driver's license. We need proof. Can you punch it on this, Steve?
Well, I'm just asking. Why did they give you
David?
I'm just curious.
Charles Hill. It doesn't say Ammon.
Oh, they didn't put the fucking Ammon on my. It's on my birth certificate.
If you don't stop using the F word, I will leave.
Stop.
I'm not going to put up.
Can I bring Chewy and just tell him that it's on my birth certificate? It's my second middle.
We need to make this. Hold on, but
yes. Okay.
We need to make this something that people can learn from. That's the purpose of this. Not YouTube friendly. No.
If your intention is to actually help a person, you're not going to allow their use of profanity to be something that makes you leave. You will overlook that in order to help the person. I really have to question the intentions of Bob Larson in coming to this discussion.
No, just respectful so people can learn from this. We need to make this.
Where did the name Ammon come from? Where did the name Ammon come from?
My uncle's name is also Ammon, his first name, so I don't know. Yeah, I really don't. There's a bunch of immigrants from Europe, man, from all different places. I have no idea. Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Where do you think it comes from?
What makes you curious?
I don't know. Maybe the Ammonites.
Who are the Ammonites?
Ask him.
Who are the Ammonites?
Oh, they're nobody.
They're nobody.
Isidore said.
Huh?
Saint Isidore. He wrote.
I'm talking about the ancient civilization.
Yeah, I know you're talking about the Ammonites, or as my southern relatives preachers would say, the Ammonites.
They say Ammonites, but you say and I'm just curious. I don't know. You know, that may be just a red herring, but I find it rather interesting that you were given that name. If that is what you were given.
Yes, I haven't given it much thought.
And you want to tell this man what the Ammonites were like, what they did?
It was one of the groups that they wanted to destroy
Israel.
In the Septuagint, we're talking about
They were the
Israel
enemy of
going in,
Israel,
and they had to
and they
Let him
practiced
go.
human
He's
sacrifice.
letting you talk. Let's let him describe.
I'm not sure he's going to tell you the whole truth.
Well, if he
They
does
were
it, then you
one-
can correct him.
They're one of the people that was genocided in antiquity. Yeah,
The
claiming
Ammonites were
from-
genocidal.
That's what the text says. Yeah.
Okay.
There's not much evidence for it. That's
But
what
just
the
who
text
were they
says.
historically?
Mhm.
Who were they historically? Who did they worship?
I think you're probably going to say Molech or something
Yes,
like
Moloch.
that. Yeah.
Yes, and they practiced infant sacrifice
Infant with the
and blood
God, the
rituals
altar,
and all
yes,
sorts of
God.
sexual
All
licentiousness.
sorts.
Okay, so I don't know that there's a connection, but
Yeah.
oftentimes a name, as you well know from
Well,
ancient Hebrew culture,
they know well.
always designated something spiritually about the progeny. Now, is it possible that there's a curse of Ammon on this man? And it was put there, maybe not deliberately, but perhaps deliberately by an ancestor. I don't know if he's telling the truth.
That is the
If he's telling the
sexiest thing.
truth, if this is an ancestral name, I would say I'd change my name. But he hasn't. And he made, I'm just suggesting.
Well, your name, your public name was D. What do you call it? Did you ever call yourself David, or was it
DCA Hillman was
Right.
what I got
When
put
did
on
you
my
change it to Ammon?
publications. I didn't change.
This would be a conversation that Bob would need to have with him if he were to have an exorcism on him or something. But since that's not what Bob was brought here for, I really have to wonder, why is he doing this? Is this like a filibuster tactic to derail the conversation? Why not just refute Ammon?
Anything. My mother
when
gave
did you
me-
kill
now,
David?
you now want to be
Oh,
known as
oh.
When
Ammon.
did you kill David?
Oh, when did I get rid of? Yeah, when I realized that he was
You
a
now,
mass, he
you
was a
now
mass
want to be known
murderer.
as Ammon. And is it
No. Carl Ruck was sitting with me one day. Dr. Carl Ruck, he's a classicist, and he's sitting with me one
He's
day.
a
and
Harvard classical
I
philosopher.
turned to him and I said, hey, you know, David was a mass murderer. I hate that name. And he goes, why don't you use your middle name? What is it? And I said, well, I've got two, Charles and Ammon. And he goes, oh, Ammon, that's a good one. Use that one. That's a true
It has
story.
a better
Okay,
ring to it
that's a
than
true
Charles.
story.
There may be nothing to that. I just find it interesting. I
Thank
find
you.
it interesting because everything that you're suggesting is consistent with that type of a belief system.
What if I told you that St. Isidore said that the name of the Antichrist is Ammon?
Who cares? Who cares what Isidore of Seville said? Who cares? What does that have to do with this? Who cares? Has nothing to do with this conversation.
Could be.
Yeah, he said that.
Who is Saint
Well,
Isidore?
what?
wrote
But
that down.
it could be many names.
Yeah, no, it's
be
interesting.
many
Like
names.
you, I find it just interesting.
If you sacrificed your children to Moloch in a,
Oh my God.
in a
can you
bloody
imagine?
ritual, I would say that could lead to the Antichrist. It could lead to a lot of things. But really, at a bottom,
Wait, what? Hold on. What? Hold on. Did Bob just say if Ammon sacrificed his children to the demon Molech, that would lead possibly to the Antichrist? Is that what?
bottom line here, you're not interested in renouncing the devil and renouncing the path that you're on to receive an exorcism at this point. You're not.
I wouldn't dare step forward and renounce the devil. I wouldn't.
Okay,
I wouldn't.
okay.
Just like I wouldn't dare step forward and renounce Vishnu. Right? I'm not a renouncer. I'm not a
Well, now,
renouncer,
wait,
and I can't do that.
Okay, so you're not willing to renounce that.
No,
and
well,
as you
no.
know,
My brain says I
every-
have to have this.
every
Bob.
I wonder, did he renounce Jesus though? I'm just when he says I'm not a renouncer, I just wonder if there was an exception there.
historic Christian baptism
Yeah.
included the renunciation of the devil.
Of-
No, let me rewind that one. He's appealing to church history again. Uh-oh.
Right? I'm not a renouncer. I'm not a
Well, now,
renouncer,
wait,
and I can't do that.
Okay, so you're not willing to renounce that.
No,
and
well,
as you
no.
know,
My brain says I have to have this.
every
Bob.
historic Christian baptism
Yeah.
included the renunciation of the devil.
Of-
Bruh. Every historic administration of the Eucharist included an entire divine liturgy that Bob Larson doesn't use. So it's like, wait, why are you appealing to a baptismal liturgy that you don't even believe in anyway? And an aspect to that baptismal liturgy when you ignore every other liturgical service that has existed for 2000. What in the world is going on here? I am so confused by Bob Larson even appealing to some aspect of a baptismal liturgy and how perpetual that aspect has been when he literally rejects everything about the sacraments and liturgies and even the very baptismal liturgies that he's referring to.
Of course.
Okay. All right. And you're not willing to stand with historic Christianity?
No, because
No.
what we have now
Okay,
is not
okay,
what they
okay.
had then.
You
Bob doesn't stand for historic Christianity. I'm just again, I'm just going to keep digging in on that one. I'm just going to have to keep pushing on that issue. Bob does not believe in historical Christianity. Okay, let that sink in. He's holding Ammon, whatever his name is, to the same to a standard that he doesn't hold himself to. And so again, every Catholic and every Eastern Orthodox watching right now is just incredibly confused as to why Bob, a non-denominational evangelical deliverance minister, is appealing to church history and standards that he himself doesn't hold to.
You've rewritten Christianity.
Yeah.
You've rewritten the Bible. You've rewritten all these things, the gospel according to Ammon. So there's really no discussion here except the possibility of a private discussion in which you might tell me some things you won't tell in front of a camera.
You know, in antiquity, Bob, the pagans and the Christians.
You're not responding to
would
what I
get
said.
together. I am responding with this answer. In antiquity, the pagans and the Christians, prominent intellectuals, would come together, and they still had that classical civilization's focus on the gymnasium. And they would come just like you and me, and they would debate back and forth, right? I am not looking for any sort of ceremony with crosses. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, Bob. What matters to me is the facts that are in this book that I have dedicated my life to studying.
We get that.
Right?
May I ask just
Why don't you
an
like the
obvious
Bible?
question?
Usually people
What
like the
is
Bible.
tattooed on your head?
Oh my goodness, Bob! That's the point the devil
I
was
can't
making.
see it. I can't see it. What
Read
is it?
Read-
I can't resist saying it again. He just held up, I think, the 28th edition of the Nestle-Aland text, which is not the same as the 27th edition, not the same as the 26th edition. It changes every edition. And he's saying he's dedicated his life to this text, and he's referring to that as the Bible. And yet it changes every edition. Now, I'm not saying there's no utility to a critical edition of the New Testament text. I obviously think there is. But my point is, you just can't, without any qualification, say this is the Bible, this is the text when you point to it in Nestle-Aland. You just simply can't do that. And I wonder how aware is Ammon of this issue? Surely he's aware, right?
Read it, Bob.
Well, I can't read it.
It says Medea.
Right, it's Greek, Bob.
And why is it there?
What is the one on the other side?
There.
That linear B?
Yeah, this is linear B. Medea, same name. And this, Bob,
And
is
why?
Etruscan.
And wait a
Oh,
minute.
God,
Wait a
watch
minute.
this video.
Why is Medea there?
It's the same. I'm telling you that. It's the same name in Etruscan. Matia. She was so well known in antiquity, the first Christ, that she was known all the way from the Black Sea to Spain. Imagine being that popular in antiquity.
Why was she
That's
so popular?
difficult because of what she could do
What
with the
could she do?
Christing drugs.
No. You leap from Medea to Christ.
She was the first Christ,
Wait a minute.
historically.
You're not
Let
telling
it-
me what she did. What did she do?
What did she do? Like, what was her job?
Huh?
She was the queen of Babylon.
Yeah. Queen of Babylon.
Yes.
The fountain of all witchcraft. Babylon.
The Medes.
Babylon the great is
Followed her.
fallen. I'm
Yes,
sure you
I'm
know
telling
those
you,
words.
yes. Yes, you're right.
Babylon, the symbol of ultimate evil.
The witchcraft, the sorcery, the porneia.
And that's
Very central.
basically what you have on your head.
Not basically, that is what I have on my head.
And you think we can have a reasonable dialogue? You really think
Why
that?
does that mean we can't?
Bob, you came to that conversation to have a reasonable dialogue, knowing what he believed, knowing who he was. You came. Why did you come if it weren't for that $5,000 check? Honest question. If it wasn't for the $5,000 check, why did you come? You knew all this about him in advance. Why didn't you come to actually engage him? If this is how you felt, you would not have come unless it were for that check.
I think this is fascinating.
You tattooed with the symbol of witchcraft and sorcery. And you want
On my
a
head.
dialogue.
On my head.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
Why do you put tattoo names on your head in antiquity?
what do you come on now, Ammon. Can you drop the public persona for a moment and just be very
No,
real
this is
here?
me, Bob.
You went from believing that Jesus Christ was your Lord and Savior.
Yes, definitely.
That you were a sinful being
Definitely.
in need of
Masturbating
forgiveness.
sinner.
Overnight.
Yeah.
Because of Aristotle
Not overnight, instantly with Aristotle.
enjoying
Yes,
fornication.
definitely.
And then
She enjoyed it too.
tattooing on your head.
I don't know. It's incredibly hilarious that somebody had a conversion over reading Aristotle.
Yes,
The whore of Babylon.
yes.
whore of Babylon.
Well,
The poor man.
that's
top of poor
an
man.
interesting leap. If I did not believe in the grace of God and the power of Christ, I would think you are hopeless, but you're not. You're not hopeless. There have been worse than you who have turned again to Christ.
What is your understanding of Lady Babylon?
Huh?
Yeah.
What is your understanding of Lady Babylon? Your personal understanding.
Well,
of her?
Babylon has both literally and metaphorically stood as the ultimate example of sorcery, witchcraft, and rebellion against God. Over and over again, it's
because of
referred
Medea, because of this woman.
to ultimate rebellion against God.
Okay.
And in the end of time, Babylon the Great has fallen.
Yes.
It speaks of this kingdom finally being judged by Christ and cast down
Okay.
at the end of the age.
The morning star, by the morning star.
And so he has this on his head.
And who was Lady Babylon? What did she do?
Well, this
specifically?
is just a
This dude, Danny. Why are you hosting theological discussions when you don't know the basics here? Honest question. What's going on here?
symbol, okay? The symbol is of rebellion, of witchcraft,
Okay, I see.
of the worship of the devil, of human sacrifice. You name it, all the licentious possibilities that are there.
What about medicine?
Okay, that is tattooed on his head.
Did you know the word medicine comes from
the
Medea,
guy
first Christ?
Who tattoos this on his head stands in judgment of Christ as a file. I'm done. I'm done. I don't have enough Celsius to keep going.
That has nothing to do with the Bible, though. I don't
But
understand.
my offer still stands.
Yeah.
My offer
Because
still
you're a
stands.
flim flammer. I'm not going to
You'll
take your
come see
offer.
me personally.
You came here to get $5,000. That's what you fucking came here for.
No microphones.
Yeah.
Just you.
It seems both of them are wrong. Ammon doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to the biblical text or exegesis. And Bob also doesn't appear to know what he's talking about either. It might be what Ammon says, a flim flam. So it seems like, this is a train wreck for pretty much everyone.
I talking man to man.
Scary. You're a scared little man. And that's the problem. Just like the
He's
folks
not.
in
He's
Harvard.
sat here and he's been talking to you for 30 minutes.
No, he's
hasn't
been
been
talking
talking.
about the Bible. He doesn't want to talk about the Bible because he can't.
Okay.
Just like the people at Harvard
I am
can't. What is a
not-
Christ, Bob?
How was Medea the first Christ? Can you explain how Medea was a Christ?
Diodorus Siculus, the historian, comes along. And
I
he
told
says,
you
this is what
if there were
Medea
any
did. She
more ad
Christed.
hominem arguments, we would be done.
You just talked about my tattoos. You're
Okay.
such a hypocrite, just like the Christians
no,
everywhere.
But you didn't
A
deny
lover
what I
of
said about.
lies.
You did not
You just
deny
love
what I
lies.
said about the tattoos. You didn't deny it. So look,
What if I picked out your ears and I said, "You
Why
bigoted
don't you,
bastard"? You take it personally, Bob.
why don't you let me say a prayer?
You can say a prayer all you want.
I would
I'm
like
not
to.
restricting you.
I would like to say a prayer.
Please,
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's say a
please.
prayer.
And I would like to put some holy oil on you when I pray.
You can take that holy oil and shove it in your ass, Bob. I'm not one of your victims.
Wait a minute. What'd you just say?
I'm not one of your victims.
No, that's
you want to
not-
hit me
no,
with
just
your
before
cross,
that.
you
What did you- what did-
psychologically abusive.
Why is the holy
wait a
water
minute,
psychologically
wait a minute.
abusive?
What did you just? I say I can
said-
do with
I
this.
said
You said
can
put the
shove it.
water
I
where the
said
sun
you-
doesn't shine.
Do you
shove
know
it.
what this is a symbol of?
I think it's a symbol of your
Of the Holy
desire
Spirit.
to invade my space, weirdo.
It's a symbol of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And you said I could
What's
shove
the
it
word?
where?
What's the word for Holy Spirit? What's the word for Holy Spirit, Bob? You don't even know that. You're a flim flammer. You have any snake oil?
What is the word for Holy Spirit? I don't know.
Seriously, Bob, look, these are all his terms, dude. He doesn't even know gospel.
Where's my brief?
What does the word gospel mean, Bob?
All right.
What did I do with
Are we wrapping it up, Bob? Or are you got a book or something?
Coward. The devil told me you were a coward, Bob.
All right, we're wrapping it
I
up.
will not listen. to
I
this
appreciate
kind of-
There's the check, by the way, right here. Here's the money. Watch.
kind of abusive,
Oh,
filthy,
look at him. You've been
negative
abusing
language.
people
All right,
for
that's enough.
years.
That's,
And
we don't need to call
name-calling.
names.
Yeah.
Bob showed up here.
I do not have to
he
put up with
engaged
that.
with
I
you.
will not
You
put
still
up
gonna
with
pay
that.
him?
He engaged with you.
You still gonna
if,
pay him?
if he agrees to let me publish this, then yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna pay him. I'm gonna donate to the church.
Remember, Bob, that's what you're all about. Remember that.
About
When he
what?
makes his charitable donation, that's you, buddy. That's you.
Charitable donation. And who benefits from that charitable donation, I wonder?
Let me see that envelope. Is there cash in here?
Cash.
No, I was going to rip it up.
That's your
Well, I won't
Sure.
do
prostitution
that.
money. You just have him give it to your church, you flim flammer.
All right. Let's not be rude.
Dude, he said I was demon possessed. You think he can't take it back? Well, you can say, "Oh, I'm aggressive with the devil," but when the devil gets aggressive with you, you're a coward and you back down. You go live the rest of your life knowing the devil got the best over you.
I think this audience sees clearly what has happened here, and you're
Yeah, both of them were wrong, and both of them were ignorant, and neither one of them really engaged in anything productive.
The audience will
reframing
judge.
of it.
They
is
will.
not-
They do.
It's not
They
going
do.
to work.
You're exactly
I
right.
will let the audience
You're
be the
exactly right.
judge.
You're exactly. That's the best thing to say. You
That's
should
the
have
best
finished with
thing.
that.
Let
You
the
should
audience
put
be
that on the.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate your
Don't
time.
touch my daughter on the way out either.
Oh.
What?
Don't touch my daughter on the way out.
Are you recording that part?
Yeah, it's recording.
Oh, Bob, I'm a dad. I'm just giving you advice. You do the same thing with your daughters. Bob, how many times did you talk about molesting children on the show? And then you have the balls to look at me and say, you got tattoos. You must be possessed. You've got a lot of gumption. I thought for sure you'd come here because I knew you when I was young. And I said, this guy's got balls. He will confront. And then you were sitting out there talking about confronting the devil, and now you're all afraid.
He's the only one out of dozens of people who came here. He's the only one.
Are you going to let him play the whole thing? Or are you going to tell him you can't
I
play
had my
parts?
say.
Yeah.
I
gonna,
stated my
You did.
position.
you
Thank
have
you,
the
Bob.
right? Okay.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, Bob.
All right. So there it is. Yeah, that was pretty much a circus. And nothing productive, in my opinion, came out from it. But hopefully what has come out from this video is a response to what Ammon was putting out there, since Bob didn't want to do that for some conspicuous reason. Even though he agreed to come there to do that very thing, he didn't do that. But appears he may have walked out with that check or received a charitable donation from that check. Anyways, I'll leave it to you to judge the motives and intentions there. Be that as it may, the net result was absolutely terrible on part of both of them. Anyways, I hope you, however, enjoyed the review here on this channel of that discussion. If you did, please let me know. Put it in the comment section, hit the like button, and make sure especially to hit that subscribe button. And also, I really would appreciate your support of the channel at patreon.com/Reason and Theology. If you appreciate the good work that I'm doing here, the content that I'm producing and putting it out there every day, multiple streams per day for free, if you think that that is helpful and you want to keep the lights on, hey, please go ahead, visit Patreon and consider supporting me there. And also getting access to all sorts of exclusive patron-only content. And also, if you want to get some courses in theology on the ecumenical councils and the theological notes and all sorts of great stuff, you need to check out rtcourses.com. That's my website where I offer some of my theological courses, rtcourses.com. Go and check it out. There's also some free resources on there available to you. All right, that's going to do it for today. I will see you tomorrow for another show. Stay tuned. God bless.